I want to talk about this recent study that I read. And I think this is something that we've discussed on the podcast before, but I want to really dive into this because this study was really interesting. So the study's name, it's a 2021 study. It's called Consolidation of Human Skill Linked to Waking Hippocampo Neocortical Replay. And you're like, okay, that's ridiculous. What the heck does that mean? Let's break that down. So essentially, there's like a 2001 study that I read on rats. And basically what they showed is during REM sleep is where skill consolidation happens. So the rats practiced, they went through this maze, right? And then when they sleep, that's when skill consolidation happened. So AKA, when you hear somebody say skill consolidation, you can think about like cementing in the brain. So you're cementing the skill that you just worked on that day. So for a long time, researchers, practitioners thought that it's all about sleep. And that's still true. Sleep is still extremely important for motor learning. But what this study and a few other studies are starting to show is that wakeful rest is just as important. So they're calling these offline gains, right? This isn't happening while I'm practicing. The gains aren't happening while I'm practicing. They happen in that reflection period right after. So when I get these short rest periods in between my bouts of working out, that's where a lot of the cementing of that skill actually occurs. So essentially what they did for this study is they put these MEG, like these brain scans, on the subjects, and then they had them learn this typing test. And they had all these different groups, but the group that performed the best wasn't the continuous straight through group. It was the group that did 10 seconds of practice followed by 10 seconds of rest, 10 seconds of practice followed by 10 seconds of rest. And the reason that group performed the best is because they observed that the replay is temporally compressed by approximately 20-fold relative to the acquired skill, is selective for the trained sequence, and predicts the magnitude of skill consolidation. So basically what that means is I'm going out, I'm learning a move. After I learn that move, my brain is compressing that skill and replaying at 20 times the speed. So I think they said it was like 24 replays in 10 seconds. Here's a quote from the lead researcher. The same amount of practice results in significantly different skill depending on the presence or absence of waking rest within the training schedule, a phenomena termed the spacing effect. Consolidation of skill is superior when frequent rest periods are interspersed with practice blocks, distributed practice, than when the same total amount of practice is performed over longer continuous blocks, aka massed practice. So the presence of waking rest interweaved with practice is a crucial determinant of skill memory consolidation. All right, so that takes me to the three takeaways here. 1, allow frequent breaks. So often in like shooting, you're improving your shooting mechanics, and it's just like, it's a numbers game. It's how fast can the rebounder get it to me? Or you're on a gun, you're on the shooting gun, you got 2-3 basketballs in there, and as soon as you shoot, that next one's coming. You're not leaving your brain any time to then reflect on that last shot. Now, if you are going to go with those bursts of like, boom, 5 quick shots in a row, you would then want to take an equal break. So if those 5 shots took me, 15 seconds, I would then want to take a break for at least 15 seconds. And ideally, maybe even more sometimes. You might even go 15 seconds on, 30 seconds off. So I think it can be pretty harmful to do those like shooting workouts where it's just so fast and the brain has no time to be like, relax, compress at 20 times speed. The other thing is taking longer rest periods. So if you are going hard in a drill or you're learning to move, whatever, you want to then at some point give them their 1 minute, 2 minutes off. And during that period, I think this is what matters the most. You need to be in almost a meditative state, because what a lot of people do is they just go grab their phones. So you're trying to replay that skill at 20 times. This is where the magic is happening. And then you go grab your phone and completely distract your brain. We just ruined everything that we just did. And the other thing that people do is conversations. So you finish the drill. During your rest period, strike up a conversation with somebody else in the gym. Again, Your brain was working at 20 times speed. It's doing this beautiful, beautiful thing to cement what you just did in the brain. And then you ruin it with a conversation. So I think, you get done and you go grab your water and you walk, you need to be in like this meditative state, walk away, let your brain be free. You don't need to consciously like really overthink the skill that you just did. I think if you just allow your mind to be free and don't let it be distracted, I think at the subconscious level, that skill that you just practiced is really going to set in to a much higher degree. Now, I know a lot of coaches and trainers don't want to take any breaks because they're like, well, I want to get up 500 shots. I would rather see somebody get 300, 350 and have some breaks in there where they can reflect on what they're actually doing. My buddy Max Schmarzo, my partner for EdU, talks about how he thinks that shooting by yourself is actually more beneficial sometimes than shooting with a partner, even if you get a little less reps. And he talked about it from the standpoint of like, if you're in the corner and you miss long, you got to go chase that ball. So there's a little more pressure on each shot. Maybe that increases arousal, that increases focus. But I look at that from the standpoint of wakeful rest, offline learning. I think you shoot and then you have 10, 15 seconds before your next shot because you got to go grab your next rebound, come back out to the 3-point line. So I think you're consolidating that skill that you just did from that last shot. And I actually have intuitively felt this before I've thought about any of these mechanisms. I always felt like shooting by myself on a court did help more than like a shooting gun workout where I got up like 500 reps. And I think that can still be valuable for sure, but there's something to being out on a court by yourself, having the visualization, having time to visualize a game scenario. Imagination is a huge thing for motor learning. This is what the motor learning scientists can't study when they say 1-on-0 work doesn't translate as well. You can't separate perception action. They don't actually account for high-level players who really have a high-level imagination, right? So that's not really 1-on-0 training because in your mind, you're out there really playing against somebody. But I feel like being out on a court by yourself can be beneficial from that standpoint and also from the standpoint of just having longer breaks in between each shot. And then the other thing I want to mention, I was reading some studies about cardio after learning and how that actually enhances that learning session. Now, I don't know how this applies to a basketball player because we're learning while doing cardio. But let's say you're doing a walkthrough, a practice, where you're learning plays. Probably the best thing you could do is end that practice getting up and down, running, get a good sweat. That's important for like blood flow to the brain. And I don't know the other mechanisms of why that works. But this recent study showed really good results on cardio right after a learning session. And this is especially true of, your math homework, or you went out and you're in school and you learned something. It's really good to then go do some cardio afterwards. And I know resistance training can show good results as well, but these particular studies are focused on cardio. So as soon as you learn something, go do some cardio. Make sure that when you're learning something, you take these little brain breaks. This isn't just for basketball. Like with your math homework, if you just bury your head in the book and you just go as fast as you can, you're not going to learn it as well. But if you go and then you let your brain breathe a little bit and then, reflect, and your brain starts to go, oh, this problem was a lot like this last problem, but this variable was switched up. And this is really where it sets in and it cements in the brain compared to just like getting done and moving on to the next thing. That reflection process is everything.